Today's video is a full review and benchmarks of the Huawei Matebook 14. I bought this laptop because I've been waiting for the Lenovo Yoga Slim 7 Pro for ages, and when this guy wasn't released in so long, I wanted to make a review series about an as viable competitor as possible, and I feel like the Matebook 14 is one of the most viable competitors to it. I paid around €1,000 or roughly $1,200 for my configuration, which is with the AMD Ryzen 5 4600H CPU. It comes with 16GB of RAM, with a 512GB SSD, and it comes with this gorgeous 3:2 aspect ratio display. However, in this model it is not the touchscreen. I have now spent a good 2 weeks of using this guy as my main machine. And the ways I've been using it has primarily been in my office plugged into a monitor. Then I've been using my USB-C monitor, the Dell 2520D. Then I've been using it quite a lot while I've been working in different cafes. And also I was doing a little work trip and I was using it as a hotel computer setup during this work trip. And then of course I've been using it a little bit at home as well, but mainly I've tried to focus on using this as my work laptop and while being on the go. Let's start out by having a closer look at the build quality. And when you pick up the laptop and just feel it like this, it has a really sturdy and nice quality feel to it. I have truly enjoyed just holding the laptop and the overall use of the laptop because it is such a high quality feel. It's an all metal build, so every part that you feel around the chassis is metal. However, when you open it, you realize quickly that it's not possible to open it with one hand. And while this maybe is not the biggest deal for some people, one thing that actually annoyed me quite a bit when I was using it is that I have this thing when I normally place my laptop in my hand like this, and then I want to try to open it like this to be able to then put it down. In this case that's not possible. I have to get my thumb in there before I can actually open the laptop. So that's a bit of an annoyance and one thing that has occurred to me quite many times when I've been using it. Once you are in the laptop, you get presented with this also very high quality feel. Both the keyboard, the whole palm rest area, the trackpad, and the complete glass screen give off a really nice quality feel to them. Just the fact that there's glass going all the way out to the edges here of the bezels gives such a premium feel to the laptop. There is not a lot of flex around the palm rest area. There's not a lot of flex around the keyboard area either. And there's really almost no flex in the trackpad area, which is something that is not common at all when it comes to Windows laptops. When it comes to the screen, you have to bend really hard to experience any kind of screen flex here. So this is also a very sturdy build. Since the hinge is pretty stiff, you could think that there would be no wobble in the screen. But there is still a fair bit of wobble, so when you start wobbling the screen like that, it will keep going for quite a while. So that's not the best solution of having a stiff hinge that still gives quite a lot of wobbling. The fingerprint reader is one of the first things that you set up with a computer like this. However, it hasn't been working perfectly. As you can see there, when I just place my finger on it quickly, it usually won't recognize my fingerprint. And there, after a few tries, it was recognizing the fingerprint, but I've had tries when I've been trying over and over and over again to get started with it. And it's supposed to have this feature that when you press the power button, it will recognize your fingerprint straight away and then log you in once Windows is starting. But I haven't had a lot of luck with that feature, and the fingerprint reader doesn't get the best rating from me, at least not so far after 2 weeks. The screen of this laptop have been absolutely amazing to use. All the way through, I have enjoyed every single part of it. As you could see in my unboxing video, there is a tiny bit of backlight bleed down here towards the bottom edge of the display, but this has not been any problem so far. In my unboxing video, I also mentioned that the colors looked a little bit washed out. However, I realized quickly that you can both install the new drivers for the Radeon card, the graphics card, and then also you can use the Radeon software to make some adjustments to the color temperature, the brightness, contrast, and so on. And by doing this, I was able to achieve a really nice color profile that I've really enjoyed using. The screen has a 98% sRGB coverage, and I feel like this is really enough for any of the use cases that I am using it for. If you want to see the monitor specification, you can see it here from AIDA64. This is a Bowie Hydis TV140 WTM NH0 monitor, and it has a monitor ID of BOE0893. Funny enough, it says here that the picture aspect ratio is 16:10, but the picture aspect ratio of this monitor is 3:2. It is a Quad HD monitor with a resolution of 2160 x 1440 pixels. The brightness is approximately 400 nits, and when you turn the brightness all the way up to max, I would say that it's a little bit too bright for most occasions. I would not use it at this brightness levels if I'm not in a very bright or outdoor setting, and I will usually turn it down to somewhere around medium brightness to be able to have a comfortable using experience. The screen is highly glossy, but if you are in a very light environment like I am now, close to a window, it is always fine as long as you turn the brightness up a bit and sit facing straight against the computer. As soon as you start turning the computer a little bit like this, you see that there are a lot of reflections happening in the screen. I can still see whatever I have on the screen, but the reflections are there and they are a little bit annoying. The same goes if I start lowering the brightness, that the reflections will be a lot more prominent and it will start getting hard seeing what is on the screen. But if I angle it back like this, and I'm just looking at it now in a lower brightness level, I can still make this kind of adjustment to make this a working experience. So I'm actually positively surprised about how well it has worked to use this glossy screen, even in lighter environments. Both for work occasions and for media consumption, I have really enjoyed using the screen. However, when I've been gaming with it, I have been noticing that it has a bit of tearing when you're moving fast from one part of the game to another. So I haven't been enjoying gaming that much of it, but it's okay for an occasional and kind of casual game, not that good for anything more advanced. When running on battery power like now, we don't hear almost any coil whine. There is a tiny bit of a noise coming from it, but I wouldn't say that it's disturbing at all. Let's plug in a cable and see if it's worse. With the original cable plugged in, there is a fair bit of coil whine coming from it. I don't hear it when I sit this far away from it, so at normal use, I wouldn't notice it. But if I lean in to listen for it near the keyboard with my ear, I definitely notice coil whine when I'm there. Let's check the temperature at this idle state. On the top here, which is usually the hottest part, an idle temperature of 24 degrees. So it's very cool to use the laptop when it's not running a heavy task. At this relatively idle state, but with a few apps opened, the CPU temperature around 35 to 40 degrees. So it's running very cool in this stage, which is nice to see. The laptop weighs 1,459 grams. With the 65 watt power cable added to it, it weighs 1,657 grams. While we are at it, let's have a quick look at this power cable and the power brick. Because this comes with a USB-C to USB-C cable and then a very small 65 watt power brick with a USB-C out. And this is one of the smallest and lightest 65 watt cables and adapters that I have been using for any laptop. However, I realized quite quickly that the total cable length is roughly 2 meters, and I find myself reaching for longer power adapters when I'm going out, and this guy has mainly been sitting in my home. The mobility of it kind of comes to a halt because it has such a short cable in total that when you bring it along, you won't really be able to use it in the same way. But if I was able to travel, for example, I would love to travel with a charger like this guy because it's such a compact one. It's more or less like a phone charger. I know battery life is really important for a lot of you guys, and I wanted to try out battery life as much as possible, and I can tell you that my overall experience of using this laptop on battery power has been really good. I've never actually been worried about running out of battery, and I never actually experienced running out of battery, which is a big plus and something that usually happens. So the overall battery life is actually, I think, really good, even though it has a higher wattage CPU. However, I was also running a few battery tests, and I was taking the charger out at 100% and then playing Overwatch for 15 minutes on maximum brightness. That brought the battery down to 83%, and the laptop stated that there was 1 hour and 5 minutes left. So while gaming, you cannot experience a very high battery life. So when gaming, you shouldn't estimate a very high battery life. It was really draining the battery fast, especially when using the screen on the maximum brightness as well. Then I was switching to playing YouTube videos off of my watch list at medium brightness. And I started at 82% battery level and then run it for 30 minutes. And after that I was at 74% battery with the computer stating 4 hours and 41 minutes left of the battery. At that 74% level, I then let the computer be idle without any apps running, but only the screen still on and on half brightness. And after 30 minutes in that state, it was at 70% and stating that it was 8 hours and 18 minutes left of the battery. After that, I plugged in, and at the 70% battery stage, the laptop stated that it would be 27 minutes to fully charge it, which was pretty much exactly the amount of time it took to fully charge. Let's have a look at the port setup. On the left-hand side, you have a USB-C port that can be used for charging the laptop, for transferring data, for charging other devices out, and for running monitors. And I've been using it together with my USB-C monitor, and it's been perfectly fine to both power the laptop and give monitor out to the monitor at the same time. So that's a big plus when you only have one USB-C port. I still find that it's quite a bummer that it only has one USB-C port, and I really wish that there was two on this machine. Then you have a 3.5mm headphone microphone combo jack and an HDMI port. On the right hand side you have two USB-A ports, which is really nice to see for the versatility of plugging in other devices. And that is it when it comes to ports. The speakers are downward firing, and you can see them here in the bottoms with these grills. But for being downward firing, they are incredibly loud and well sounding. When you place them on a surface like this and play a YouTube video, 16:9 aspect ratio laptop, and have been eyeing the 16:10 aspect ratio or the 3:2 aspect ratio. It is actually pretty hard to run it at max volume because it gets loud enough to kind of really be too loud to listen to. And that's not very common for downward firing speakers. However, if you place it on your lap or on a soft surface, of course that will block a little bit of the speaker power, so you might lose some volume there. I find the speakers to be both clear and loud, so I'm very happy with the overall speaker experience. Using the trackpad has been an amazing experience altogether, and I really appreciate the fact that the trackpad is slightly bigger than many other laptops that I've been reviewing. The reason why it is because of the 3:2 aspect ratio, making the laptop a bit higher and then a bit bigger on this direction as well, to give space for a bit more trackpad. And therefore, you can be really comfortable to make long swipes and even adjust things by just being in one part of the trackpad. And I really like the experience of having that flexibility. However, the only thing I find a bit annoying is when you type, sometimes the trackpad gets activated while you are typing. So the palm rejection is not perfect, and it will sometimes be touching the trackpad and then affecting something on the screen while you're just supposed to be typing. That hasn't happened very often, but it is something to be aware of. The keyboard is also very solid, and I can truly recommend this keyboard actually. It's quite silent and it's not very long travel distance, but the feedback is good enough and the spacing is pretty good. It has this full-size enter key and a layout that I really appreciate using. And it also has a backlight that is very well adjustable between a few different levels, which is also something that you don't see very often. So here the laptop backlight is off, and then here we have the first level of brightness on, and then here we have the second level of brightness on. As you can see, it's not super bright, but most of the time you don't need super bright backlight in a keyboard. So this is more than enough for me, and it's really nice to be able to have that subtle backlight in the keyboard as well. This is the webcam and the microphone when the laptop is placed on an even surface. And I find this pretty annoying because the camera is down on the keyboard area. And as you can see here, the camera pops up from the keyboard area, which is a decent feature because it blocks the camera so that it's a bit of privacy there. But I don't like the angle that is pointing from the bottom up. When I place the laptop on the roof stand, this is the angle that I get from the webcam. But when I place the roof stand up on my keyboard, I get this angle, which I think works really well for most occasions. There is no Windows Hello with the camera, so the only Windows Hello is the fingerprint reader that is included in the power button. If you want to know the SSD model number, you can see it here on the screen from AIDA64. This is stated as a WDC PC-SN730 NVMe SSD. The speed of the SSD is pretty decent as well, at a read speed of 3408 megabytes per second and a write speed of 2700 megabytes per second. At first I was a bit bummed out about the fact that there's no Wi-Fi 6 or Bluetooth 5 in this laptop. However, all the Bluetooth and Wi-Fi I've been using has been working perfectly fine. And the last laptop I tried had a bit of Bluetooth dropout issues, and it's so annoying when you're using a Bluetooth mouse on a daily basis to have that kind of issue. So it's perfect here that it's working no problem at all. And the overall Windows experience, I just have to say, has been super nice. It's all working. There's really no issues with anything so far in any of my daily tasks. It's just an overall great experience for pretty much everything I have used it for. It comes with these pre-installed Windows apps and Microsoft apps, but except that, there's not a ton of stuff installed when you open the laptop up for the first time. For example, there was no antivirus app included, which is lovely to see. That is usually a part of most other laptops. One of the pre-installed apps that you can usually make some use of is the Lenovo Vantage in Lenovo, or Huawei PC Manager in this case. Here you can go to, for example, check for new drivers, but also you have the option to switch between the balanced power mode and the performance mode. The performance mode you can only use when you're plugged into power, but I've been testing it quite thoroughly when plugging in and changing between the two different power modes, and neither CPU or GPU intensive task seem to give pretty much any difference between the two modes. So I would pretty much just stick to the balanced mode at all times, because it really doesn't make a difference. I was running Cinebench R20 in plenty of different configurations, for example plugged in and on battery power, in performance mode and in balanced mode, but the scores are pretty much the same all across the board. I reach approximately 2,700 to 2,800 points in Cinebench R20. And while doing that, I get a temperature that goes up to around 100 degrees. Sometimes it stays at around 98 degrees, and sometimes it hits around 100 degrees. When moving to Cinebench R23, where you get a more sustained test, then you get a score of 6,677. And during that test, you had a max temperature of 104 degrees on the CPU. I was also testing out Heaven benchmark in a few different settings. For example, I was trying out in Quad HD resolution, and there the laptop really struggled to reach any big frame rates, but it had a score of 420 and an average FPS of 16.7. And at that point, the CPU temperature was 108 degrees maximum. At 108 degrees on the CPU, the keyboard area was measuring at around 42 to 43 degrees. And that's the only point when the keyboard area has started feeling a little bit hot to the touch. In all other tests, even when the laptop CPU reached around 100 degrees, the keyboard area was still around 39 degrees or so, and not hot to the touch at all. When switching from Quad HD to Full HD, I was reaching a score of 659 in Heaven benchmark, with an average FPS of 26.2. And in this case we had a max temperature of 108 degrees on the CPU. I then switched up to Max Performance mode, which, as I said before, won't really make a difference in this case. And with Max Performance on, I was reaching 647 points with a maximum temperature of 109 degrees. So the computer ran a little bit hotter on the performance mode, while performing a little bit worse in the Heaven benchmark. Video editing I do in Davinci Resolve, and the AMD CPUs have really bad compatibility together with Davinci Resolve. The same goes for this 4600H CPU. It's really not working that well together with Davinci Resolve. I would import a few clips, and then it would straight away start to just completely lag out and not work at all. That's a bit of a pity, because otherwise the 3:2 aspect ratio would be lovely for editing videos, because you get so much of the timeline visible down here, so you can really get a good overview of the project as a whole. Gaming was a very solid experience, except the things I mentioned before, where there was a bit of screen tearing when moving quickly from one side of the game to the other. However, I was able to run Overwatch at Quad HD resolution, 70% render scale, and approximately reaching 50 to 60 FPS most of the time in the game. I find this very playable, and although a 3:2 screen at 14 inches is quite small, it's still enjoyable to play an occasional game of Overwatch in a casual setting. Since this is an AMD laptop, it's not supposed to work with a Thunderbolt eGPU, but since I have one available, let's just plug it in and see what happens. we get the message Thunderbolt device functionality might be limited. The laptop starts charging, and then we'll see if it keeps taking charge or if it stops after a little bit. It seems to work fine to use the eGPU as a charger with this laptop. It says that it's going to be 10 minutes to charge it fully, and except that, there's nothing else showing up than that notification about not having full Thunderbolt capability. Let's conclude the review of the Huawei Matebook 14 that I've been using as my main laptop for the last 2 weeks. It has been a very good experience using this laptop. I didn't have that much expectations on it. There's been a few of you guys that have been telling me that I should really take a look at it, but I've never tried it in a store. I've never got a real impression of the keyboard, the screen, the trackpad. And I gotta say that those 3 things are really what make this laptop special. The combination of all the things in the front here, the screen, the keyboard and the trackpad, really make this laptop into a true joy of using. I wish that the webcam would have been placed up here, because it has been causing me way more trouble than pleasure to have it down here in the keyboard. Then of course I also wish it would be possible to use it with Davinci Resolve, since that is my video editing software of choice, but it has really bad compatibility with AMD. But except those few issues, I really see this as one of the best laptops you can get on the market right now. The price around 1,000 euros or $1,200, which I need to say is including sales tax in Sweden 25%, for getting a package that has this kind of quality feel, this kind of screen, together with a good port setup, and this kind of super high quality keyboard and trackpad, I think is a great value package all in all. And if you can't wait for Lenovo's offering when it comes to those aged CPU laptops, like the Lenovo Yoga Slim 7 Pro or the Lenovo IdeaPad 5 Pro, I think the Huawei Matebook 14 is a super viable competitor that I think will actually be standing strong against my Lenovo Yoga Slim 7i, which has been my laptop of choice for the last few months. The next longer video I will be making about the Huawei Matebook 14 will most likely be a comparison together with the Lenovo Yoga Slim 7 and Slim 7i. So if you want to see that video, please stay tuned by subscribing to this channel. And if you enjoyed the video and watched all the way here, I would really appreciate if you want to put a like on the video. I hope you have a really nice day, and then I will see you in the comment section and in the next video. Bye bye!